There's a few more things that we can kind of learn that the quadratic formula has for it. And follow along with me if you can. Over here, the quadratic formula, you may have noticed that our square root over here, well, that square root tells us some additional information, and sometimes that information is good to know. We know what we have here is, when we do the square root, we like positive numbers underneath the square root. Or we like to have the square root go away completely. And we don't really like negative numbers underneath the square roots, even though we could solve each of those problems. But did you know what that means if we have a positive number underneath the square root? Or if we have 0 underneath the square root? Or we have a negative number underneath the square root? Well, that tells us the number of solutions our quadratic will potentially have. So rather than solving the entire quadratic out, we may be able to just look at the discriminant. B squared minus 4ac, the discriminant, and that will tell us what kind of solutions we can look for. So I have 3 examples, and those 3 examples will tell us each one is a little bit different in what solutions we can expect. So 3x squared plus 4x minus 5 equals 0. Let's just evaluate the discriminant. So that's the b squared, so that's 16b minus 4 times a times c. 16 minus 12, 20, 80, blah, blah, blah. What is that number? 20 times 3 is 60, 60, 76. So in that case, in the first example, the discriminant is 76, which means that I'm going to have a positive number underneath the radical. And when I have a positive number underneath the radical, I will have 2 solutions. And that's what's important, is the number of solutions I'll have 2 solutions. In the second example, b, let's solve this out, or let's just find the discriminant. So this becomes b squared, negative 6 squared is 36, minus 4 times 9 times 1. 36 minus 36, that equals 0. So I'm going to have, in my quadratic formula, I'm going to have the square root of 0, or essentially the square root disappears. When that happens, that tells me that I will have 1 solution. So when the discriminant is 0, I'll have 1 solution for the quadratic. The third example, c, I have b squared, 64, minus 4 times 3 times 7. And so that's 64 minus 12. 12 times 7 is, what is that, 84? So I have 64 minus 84 equals minus 20. In this case, the discriminant is negative. You know, I'm not really worried about the value. I just want to know if it's positive or negative or 0. And in this case, it's negative. So that tells me that I'm going to have to deal with a negative square root, which always produces an imaginary number or an irrational imaginary number. So I'm going to have 2 solutions, but those 2 solutions are going to be imaginary solutions. So the options I have, in my first example, I had a positive discriminant, and that's going to produce 2 solutions, 2 real solutions. My second example, my discriminant evaluated at 0, which means I'll have 1 real solution. And in my third example, we had an example where the discriminant was a negative number. And when it's a negative number, I'm going to have imaginary solutions.